Hi everyone and welcome to my first book video of the year. Woo! I thought that we could start with a wrap up of 2021 and talk about what I want to have for goals for this year and what my goals are for book videos and such. I'm also going to tell you about my favorite books of 2021 and my least favorite ones. And it's not going to be books that was published in 2021, but books I read in 2021. But let's talk about my goals for last year. As you can see here, my goals for last year was 400 books, which I in the end managed to do. It was insane and I did it. I don't know when I think about it afterwards if I like that I had that goal. I feel like, yay, I did it. That's very good. Kudos to me for being able to read 400 books in. Yes, kidding. For 100 books in 1 year. But I also feel like I picked books that was shorter instead of books that I actually wanted to read, just because I got so stressed out by not being able to finish the goal, which made it very hard for me to keep up on track, because I do have a day-to-day life, I do have a job, I do have my normal stuff I need to do. I also do streams on this YouTube channel, and it just made it impossible to read 1 or 2 books every day of the year. It also limited what I could pick for kind of books. I felt like I really want to read books that were thicker, but I felt like I can only manage to read a book that was 300 pages long because that's what I could finish in one day. I know I could probably finish 800 pages if I just sat and read all day and did nothing but reading. And I do have days when I can do that, but at the same time, it's not very often, considering I do have a life outside of reading. So it wasn't a manageable, but I felt like I did it in the end. But I felt like the quality of everything I read last year was not very good. I felt like if you look at the overall picture, most of the books I just scaled as very meh in ratings, and I think it's because I didn't want to read them technically. I just picked them up because they were manageable in size of pages, which is something I've learned for this year. Something else that I learned is I read half of the books I read last year was for work. Many might not know, but I'm a librarian in my real life, and I read a lot of high school and middle school and grade school books for my job because I'm a school librarian. And I feel like it's not manageable after a while that I can't read all of these children's books. I do enjoy them, don't get me wrong, but I feel like I put so much effort into my job and work-related literature on my own free time that I never got to actually pick the books I wanted to read. But at the same time, it goes hand in hand with the first thing I said, because children's book and middle grader books are usually faster to read than an adult fictional book, which is probably why I picked so much books from work to read. So I've said that this year I'm not going to read as much for work. I'm going to read the things I need to read, but I'm not going to read everything. So I'm going to focus more on my own reading and what it is I want to read. And if I do need to read for work, I'm going to do that on my work hours and not on my free time. And I will dedicate my free time to the books I want to read. Something else, I felt like I picked up a lot of books that were popular on BookTube and books that was popular on Bookstagram, and I knew I was not going to like them because they were in a genre I didn't like, or I wasn't really interested in the plot. But I felt like the hype was so big to these books that I picked them up just because of the hype and because I didn't want to feel left out in the booktube and the book community. So I read them, but I didn't really enjoy them, and I feel like I should trust my instincts more and not pick up books I know I will not enjoy, and maybe just stick to books I know I want to read. Something else I feel like is for this year, 2022, I want to read the books that are on my to be read list on my Goodreads. It's an app that I use to track all the books I want to read and the books I have read. I want to read all the books that I have shelved to be read on there, but I also want to read all the books I own in my own possession and that I have on my bookshelf, because I feel like I have a lot of books right now that I myself have bought, but also books that you guys have gifted me, and I feel like I need to get through those books. So this year I'm going to focus on finishing books that I actually plan or have planned to read, and not adding so many new books to my piles of already books I want to read. My to be read list on Goodreads are at 300 books, which is really, really high. I'm not saying I'm going to read all of them, but I want to make that list a lot shorter by reading as many books as possible on that list. I don't know how many books that I own in my own possession in my bookshelf that I haven't read yet, but they are probably 100 or so. Something I really want to focus on this year is to read more books from other countries or author from other countries, because I feel like I have focused a lot on American or English speaking authors, and of course Swedish authors because I'm from Sweden myself, but I want to go out and see more cultures and see more differences, and I feel like you can do that the best way in books and literature. So I want to try out more literature from other countries that I usually don't read from. Some of the countries I'm really interested in reading more from is Russia, because I like the dystopians. I want to read more from Hungary because I have Hungarian blood myself. I also want to read more from Indian authors and Asian authors. I've realized I really like the way Asian authors write their stories. I like how they are very poetic and very they are not very straightforward in their stories, but they are more you have to read between the lines. They are not telling you stuff, but you have to figure it out between the lines of stuff. And I really like that concept of writing, and I really like descriptions, and descriptions are very heavy in Asian books, or the Asian books I've tried so far. I don't know if it's like something all of them do, but it's something I want to read more of. So that's what I want to do for this year, and what I have learned from 2021. I was very stressed last year. I picked shorter books. I didn't read because I enjoyed it. I read because I felt like I had to keep up with the goal that I had. So this year I'm not going to set a goal. I'm just going to relax. I'm going to pick books I really want to read for myself. And I want to read more books that I already have put aside to read. As well as I want to read books from authors from other countries. Yes. And that was my wrap up from 2021 and what I'm going to focus on here. So let's go to my favorite books of the year. The first one is no other than Stephen King's book Later. This book I felt was very typical of Stephen King. I felt like it went back to old Stephen King. Most of his newer works have been more crime related or detective related and not so much horror like his older books are. And I felt like this was like diving into those old days of the old classic Stephen King books. you basically follow this teenager kid who can see ghosts and spirits, and he helps the NIPD detectives with a case with a ghost who hunts beyond the grave, so to speak, and he does crimes even though he technically is dead. I thought it was really interesting. It's not as big as his other books, and it was definitely one of my favorite reads of the year. Another book that I really, really liked is A History of Bees by Maja Lunde. It's from a Norwegian author, but it's translated into English. It's going to sound weird, but it's basically a book about bees and what would happen if we didn't have bees, and the importance of bees in our environment. And it's basically tells from 3 generations. It's from the past, the present, and the future, and we get everything in this that I like as a reader. I like the historical aspect of it. I like the seriousness of it, that it has a serious topic and is something we can relate to because we have environmental questions and issues right now. But it also takes up dystopians, which I really, really like. And we talk about what would happen if bees didn't exist, what happens to all the pollination and all that. It's very interesting, but they also have a lot of like family dramas and intrigues, and I really, really like it, and I do recommend it, even if it's a very special book. Another book that I really, really liked this year was Jurassic Park by Michael Crichton. And I actually never read this book. I've seen the movies multiple times and I really love the movies. And when I saw this in the library, I was like, maybe I need to actually read this. At first, I didn't know it was based off of a book, so I was very surprised, but I had to read it once I saw it, and I was very surprised how much I loved it. It's kind of like the movies, but kind of not. There's a couple of scenes in the book that we don't get in the movies, and there's some relations between the people that we don't, that's not the same as the ones in the movies. We get a lot of science and scientific talk in the book, which is actually something I like, even though I don't usually like scientific talk that much. But this was very interesting to me. I read it in one go, in one night, and I just couldn't put it down. I have put Michael Crichton's other work on my reading list, and I really hope I can get some time to read them soon, because I really, really enjoy the way he writes. Another book that I really liked this year was Before the Coffee Gets Cold by Toshikazu Kawaguchi. I don't know if I said that wrong, but this book really, really got to me. It's one of the books that I actually cried to last year. It really warmed my heart as well. It's a very short story or short book, but it's also divided into shorter stories that you can read one-on-one if you want to. But the premise is basically it's about a cafe where you can go back in time. You sit in a specific chair and you get a specific cup of coffee and you can go back in time. But you can only go back in time inside the cafe, and you cannot leave the seat where you're sitting, and you have to return to the present before the coffee gets cold. We follow different people with different life experiences and different lives in general, and how they want to go back in time for a specific reason. I don't want to talk more about it because I don't want to spoil anything, but it's really heartwarming, and one of the stories really got to me and made me really, really sad. Yeah, I do really recommend it. It's a really beautiful book. Another book that I really liked last year was Pan's Labyrinth, The Labyrinth of the Faun by Guillermo del Toro. Guillermo del Toro actually wrote the manuscript of the movie, And after the movie came out, it was a hit. This book was written. So the book is actually written after the movie. You can also tell when you read the book that it's not a lot of descriptions. It's not very descriptive heavy, so to speak. You can tell that the author of this is more into manuscripts and scripts in general. But I really, really liked it. It really follows the movie on point. There's nothing more to it, and I just really like it. It has that atmosphere to it that makes you just want to cuddle up and read it, like a dark fairy tale. And it also has beautiful illustration, the most beautiful illustration I have ever seen. It kept me intrigued the entire time, and I read through the entire night just to finish this book. So I really, really recommend this. Another book that I really, really liked is actually a comic, and you can find it for free at Webtoon, and it's called Lore Olympus by Rachel Smythe. And Lore Olympus is basically the lore about Olympus. You follow Hades mainly and Persephone and their relation to each other. You also get to follow all the other gods and all the other myths and stuff. I do want to say that it can be a little bit trigger warning to this because they do talk about very heavy subjects sometimes. It is mainly a romance, but as you all know, the Greek gods have some heavy shit going around with both sexual assaults, rapes, death, all those kind of things, the massacres. So it basically have everything, but I do want to say it's still mainly about a love connection between Hades and Persephone. So it's hard to say what it is and what it isn't, but I really, really enjoyed it, and the author just made her very first volume of this because it's so popular on webcomic and webtoon. And I do really recommend it. I've been reading it for a couple of years, but I added it here because I really want to recommend it. I can't recommend it enough. The last book is actually from a Swedish author that has been translated, and it's called The Lost Village by Camilla Sten. Many people talked to me and they told me I needed to read this, and I'm always like, Swedish author, they can't write good horror or thriller books. I know we write a lot of them, but to me they are very repetitive, and they basically are the same. But this book had me on edge the entire time. I remember I read this when I went to my dad's 60th birthday party, and I just didn't want to be on the birthday party because I wanted to go home and read this because I just wanted to know how it ended. And it was really, really good. It's about a village where all the people just suddenly go missing, and there's 1,000 people just gone, and nobody knows why. When the police from the other city next to it come to investigate, all they find is a dead corpse at the Times Square, where a body has been stoned, but also they find a baby in the school. Other than that, they know nothing. And the book is about a documentary team and how they are going to go and investigate this and make a documentary story about it. But as soon as they get to the village, spooky stuff starts to happen. And I can't recommend it enough. If you want to get into Swedish authors, I do recommend this is a great thriller. Yeah. And for my least favorite books, there are 5, and I'm not going to talk too much about them. I'm just going to be like, ugh, I did not like this. And I'm sorry if I don't like your favorite book, but this is just my personal taste and my personal thoughts, and it's okay to disagree with me. Just because I didn't like these books does not mean that you can't like them. If they sound interesting to you, you should definitely read them, but this is just my personal thoughts on them. The first one is a book that was extremely hyped up by booktubers and Instagram and everything, and it's called The Midnight Library by Haig. It's basically about a girl who commits suicide, and when she does that, she ends up in a place that's a library place after death, where she can see how her life could have been if she made different decisions in her life. She gets to learn that instead of wondering about all these what ifs, she can actually see what if. So she can see, what if you didn't do this to your cat? What if you accepted this guy's proposal? What if you actually kept on becoming a good swimmer? What if you did this and this? Would your life be better? And I do like that message. I really, really do. And the only thing that I didn't like about this book was the fact that we take it very easy on the suicide, and I feel like we should not glorify the suicide. It is very clear that we learn that she feels like she didn't want to do the suicide in the end, and she learned her lesson about stuff, but I feel like she didn't actually suffer much. She didn't actually have a bad life, if you can say so, to then go and want to have a suicide. She had a perfectly good life, and I felt like it just didn't make sense to me, and I didn't like it. Another book that I didn't like was The Girl from the Well by Rin Chupeco. I read this because I liked the cover, and I got the Ring horror movie vibe from it, and when I read it, I was just very disappointed. Maybe because I hyped myself up for this book, but it's basically about this ghost that we follow and her observations, and her looking at humans, and then her wanting to help humans who are experiencing supernatural stuff, and she wants to stop other ghosts. Other than that, she's just wandering around doing observations, and to me that was just very boring. Another book I didn't like was The Duke and I by Julia Quinn. This has been made into a Netflix series, and I didn't like it. The story is fine. It's basically a historical romance. You follow them. It's nice. You know, it's about a guy and a girl. They are in love. He tells her that he does not want to be a father. He does not want to have any children whatsoever, and he says he cannot marry her because he wants her to have children, and he does not want to have children. When they get married, she is okay with that and says that she likes him anyway and she wants to get married. After a while, she kind of still wants to have children, even though he said that he didn't want any, and I think that he also lied that he couldn't get them, but then she figures out that he can, he just doesn't want them. Anyway, one night when he gets super drunk and he's so intoxicated that he can't really physically work his body, and he can't control his body, she basically rapes him. And he tells her no over again while she's doing it, but she doesn't really care because she wants to have a baby, and I feel like that's wrong. Just because it's a man being assaulted does not mean it's okay. Later on in the book, he basically forgives her and everything is fine. I don't think it's fine, I don't think it's okay, and I don't like the fact that most of the people are making this into a romance thing and making it into how cute and blah blah blah. No, it's not. I did not like it. Another book I didn't like was A Little Life by Hanya, Yanagihara. This book I read because everyone said you will cry if you read it, and it was very hyped up on BookRead, and I read it only because of that. The book, I don't know what to say about the book. I felt like we follow 5 people, 5 friends, and their life from their growing up, and there's one friend who experienced some trauma in his childhood, and throughout the story we get to find out what kind of trauma it is, but then he also experienced trauma in the present, and then he gets some trauma in the end of the book, so basically in the future. I felt like this one kid, this one person experienced so much trauma in different kind of ways that it shouldn't be possible that one person endures all of this on his own. And I'm not saying like he experienced one thing over and over again. It was like different kind of traumas all the time. So after, it was also a very thick book, like 800 pages or something. So after maybe 500 pages, I stopped caring. I felt like I didn't care for the characters anymore, and I didn't care because there were so much sadness, so much depression that it just, I couldn't take it. So I became numb, and therefore I didn't really like it. I felt like if you stop caring for the characters, then what's the point of the book, really? And the story is good, the story is super well written, but maybe it's just not for me. The last book that I didn't like last year was You by Caroline Kepnes, and it's been made into a Netflix series as well called You. The only reason why I didn't like this, because I should like this because it's a stalker thriller, it has some kidnapping in it, it has some abuse in it. I'm not saying I like that, but I do like thrillers, and I like stalker kind of books. So it should have been up my alley, but I didn't like it because of the way it was written. It was written in a way that the person was always describing it as, you said this, and you did this, then you did this, then you went there, then you looked there. It was always, every sentence started with you. And it was fine in the beginning, but after 100 pages, I was so tired of reading you all the time, and I got triggered in the end, and I just couldn't bear with it, and I just wanted to put the book down. And therefore, I did not like this book. And yeah, basically. And that's actually my top 5 worst books that I read 2021. Did you guys like any of them? Did you guys want to read any of them or read one of my favorite books? Comment down below. I will come back with another video next week with some more book recommendations or a book review. I'm not sure yet. But thank you for watching. And thank you for listening to my rambles, and have a good day. Bye.